Welcome to 30 Minutes of Faith. We're very happy to have Reverend Kevin Ross with us from Unity of Sacramento Church. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Nice to have you.
Yeah.
Now, tell us where you were born and raised.
I was born in Chicago, Illinois, on the south side of Chicago in the George Pullman Roseland community.
Mm-hmm. In Mexico, a couple of years ago, I said to a man, "Your English is really good. Where did you learn it?" And he said, "In Chicago." Said he was born and raised there, but had gone to Mexico 25 years ago.
Good.
Really threw me for a loop. Did you graduate from high school there in Chicago?
Yes, I went to Neil Simeon Career Academy there, where I got a lot of my inspiration to lead from high school. Yeah.
Did you grow up in a religious home?
Yes. Well, and using the word religious would be apropos. We were a church-going home. Every Sunday morning, we would wake up to the sound of spiritual music on the radio, and my mother would be pressing clothes and waking us up earlier than we probably wanted to be up on a Sunday morning. But yeah, we did get up and go to church every Sunday.
But you grew up praying and singing and knowing the scriptures a bit and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Is your mother still alive?
Yes, she is. She's in San Antonio. Actually, we are preparing to go and visit with her and my brothers. All of my brothers and our children will kind of gather up in San Antonio to be with Mom for Christmas there.
Oh, wonderful. Mm-hmm. So she's got a host of grandkids, sounds like?
Yes, a young tribe.
Now, when did you decide to go off to college and do other things with your life? Was that something in high school you were just going to automatically do?
You know, when I was in the 8th grade, I had an important mentor and teacher, Barbara Powell. And when I was in 8th grade, she took us on a college tour for our 8th grade class trip. And so we toured throughout the South. We went up north. We did various things, but we went to a place called Morehouse College where I got an opportunity to actually walk the hallowed grounds where my then hero, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., actually went to school. I sat in the classrooms where he sat and walked some of the grounds where he walked. And so I made up my mind in 8th grade that I was going to Morehouse College and ended up going there.
Martin Luther King Jr. would be a hero to many. Mm-hmm. When did he become a hero in your life?
Around 6th grade, I'd say around 6th grade. You know, obviously his holiday was a big deal in our school where I was growing up in Chicago, and he was a very prominent voice because they would play the videos and my parents would explain to me what had happened then. And I was always drawn to excellent orators. I just love the English language. I love the spoken word. And when I would see his videos and see his conviction and experience the impact that he had on the world, there was something in me that saw him being more inspiring than Superman and Spider-Man. And I said, I want to be like him. I want to be like him.
You know, I was in the military
Mm-hmm.
and had been to a class with 3 or 4 guys, and we'd decided after class to run to the chow hall, and you know, the chow hall stayed open till midnight and just
Mm-hmm.
get something to eat. And we were walking back to the barracks, and a military policeman pulled up in a car and said, "Did you guys hear that Martin Luther King has been shot?"
Wow.
And of course we had remembered President Kennedy and all of those things, you know, and we said, "What?"
Yeah, yeah.
Said, "Yeah, he was," you know, and gave us the whole rundown of the where, when, and why. And I didn't even sleep much that night. I just thought, that can't be. We can't live in a country where we just shoot each other down.
Yeah, yeah.
Now these days we're involved with shootings nearly on a daily basis.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that spiritually?
I believe that we harm each other because we fear each other.
That's well said.
You know, essentially, if and when we come to truly know that we're pressed out of the same life, that when we really get to understand our oneness with each other and our true connection to each other as a human household, I think it would be virtually impossible to truly harm one another. But it seems that we have been shown to fear each other the things that we don't understand, the languages that are different, the culture that is different, the colors that are different, and all of that. And my emphasis is to really, with my work, to not teach people to be colorblind or culture blind or any of that, but to teach people to learn to love all the culture and color that they see, and recognize that what strengthens one strengthens all, what diminishes one diminishes us all.
That's nicely said.
Thank you.
I grew up in a pretty sheltered community,
Mm-hmm.
and compared to how I grew up and how my grandchildren grow up
Mm-hmm.
in schools with every nation, kindred, tongue, and people, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and those kids that are just getting started in life now really are colorblind and cultural blind. They doesn't matter to them. They just want to know what your name is and will you be my friend?
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful in another generation or two that will sort of
We
satisfy.
we have to be taught to fear each other. Children, I have.
That's the old song from South Pacific.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to be taught.
Yeah, you have to be taught this. And so there's a lot of unlearning, really, that we have to do. When you look at children, they naturally gravitate toward one another, no matter what their backgrounds are. I've worked with them over the years in different capacities, and my experience of them, there's this innocence, there's this glow, there's this real connection that they are taught to break. I don't think that they come here polarized in any way, shape, or form. You know?
I agree.
Yeah, and so the more we unlearn society from being afraid of one another, this is why I think this program is awesome, because we're having an opportunity to unpack and see, you know, in a safe context.
One of our threefold missions of interfaith is
Mm-hmm.
that we have learned and understand that people we know and like, we won't harm.
Yeah, that's very
We
true.
become friends, and
Yeah.
we no longer care much about backgrounds or
Yeah.
color of skin or any of those other things. We just have
Yeah.
a friend, and we want to be friends forever.
Yeah.
How are your children treated?
How are my children treated? Well, they're treated quite well. You know, it's an interesting question. My children attend our Sunday school, as you know, at Unity of Sacramento, and one of the Sunday school teachers. I mean, they're treated royally, but one of the Sunday school teachers, you know, was very shy recently. So she came up to me. She says, "Rev, I don't know how to break this to you." I said, "Well, what is it?" She says, "Well, I don't know how you're going to take it." I said, "Well, what is it?" She says, "Your eldest daughter has just been cutting up in class." I said, "Well, you're going to have a job, right?" And that wasn't a big deal. I said, "Yeah, she's 5, and yeah, we'll have a talk with her after school, you know." So, but they love our children. They're appreciated, and they're growing up in an environment where they get an opportunity to also learn from others who are not like them, you know, and I think we're on the front, in my particular community, we're on the front lines of diversity. That's part of what I love about being in Sacramento, that you have all of this diversity, and how do we sit inside of that tension and that creativity and all of the variety of points of view, and coexist and cooperate and co-create something that wouldn't have happened had we not come together. So watching my children do that with their playmates, watching even the teachers, you know, struggle with that, it's good. But I'm on that question, I really sit with that. You know, sometimes I wonder, are they treated too well?
Wow.
You know, because my kids have it made, thank God, and people come and visit. I say, you know, what should we bring the children? Nothing. We're trying to unpack things, sneak things out of the garage, you know, because of how the pileup. I want them to really value what I think are our greatest assets, which are our relationships. You know, I love that they have material things and all of that, but I think sometimes there's too much of an emphasis on giving material things to show love and compassion. I think time well spent, quality time, and a good connection, just a good connection with another person, another living person is often all we need.
I'm in agreement. Now tell us how you came to Sacramento.
I was preparing, I was actually a candidate for my home church that I grew up in Chicago. And it turns out that they deviated from that search process and brought in someone who wasn't in the process at all. And so I said, okay, God, well, if this is not it, you know, I thought I prepared my whole life for this. This was going to be my next step. And I said, well, I began to be itinerant again. You know, for several years I have traveled the country in different parts of the world, taking the message out, and I have a life coaching practice, so I've been able to work with people one-on-one, and my wife and I have a camp for teenagers that we've been running for several years. So I got back to that. But I was also in a space of, you know, inquiry, what's next? I mean, where am I going to land? And I get a call from someone who wished to remain anonymous, who says,
Really?
who says, there's a movement afoot to have you as the new senior minister at Unity of Sacramento. Now, I had spoken at Stanford and what's this other, San Diego State, and some of the other, I'd spoken all around the UCLA, all around the region. I'd never even been to Sacramento. So I said, well, who and how, and you know how that is. How do they know me? So obviously I began to investigate and talk to our worldwide headquarters and got information and kind of gotten the flow of this process. When I discovered what Sacramento is and what the composition of the community was, I was very excited. One of my spiritual mentors was a 1923 graduate, Dr. Howard Washington Thurman, who was also a Morehouse graduate, but he was also a mystic spiritual teacher. He's one of Dr. King's inspirations. He was one of the first people to meet with Mohandas K. Gandhi to, usher the nonviolence philosophy into the United States. And in the 1940s in San Francisco, in the 1940s, he had a multi-ethnic, multicultural church called, I think, the Church for All People. And I used to say to myself when I was in school, wow, if I could do something like that, that would be awesome. And so when I get this call and discover Unity of Sacramento is such a place, I just leap. And I asked God, I said, just give me a sign if this is to be. My wife and I were in Chicago visiting family and friends, and we were on our way back to Kansas City, where I was pastoring at the time, or had recently stopped pastoring at the time. And we were at the airport, and there is an overhead sign. And the sign at the gate where we were about to board the airplane said, Chicago, Kansas City, Sacramento.
Really?
Chicago, Kansas City, Sacramento. I said, honey, that's a sign. She says, oh yeah. I said, no, look, it says Chicago, Kansas City, Sacramento. I said, I believe we're going. And weeks later, I received a phone call asking me to come out and do a trial sermon and go through a battery of interviews. And lo and behold, I would get the position. And I'm very glad I did.
Well, we're glad you're here too. How many years has that been since you came here?
In the fourth year now. I'm in the fourth year.
And will you stay here?
I would love to. I purchased some real estate to ensure that I can sink some roots down. So we actually like Sacramento a lot. It's a wonderful place to rear children. It's a wonderful place to, it's kind of, I would consider a place that if you sink roots, you have the possibility to grow tall, like bloom where you plant it. And the relationships that I've been able to foster have been very meaningful. I can actually sink into those relationships. Different than Chicago. I love Chicago, but it's such a big place. It's so big that I don't know how deep I could cut in, but I would love to stay here.
We've been in Sacramento for more than 30 years. One of the things we've liked is you can go downtown and be in the mix of the politics and all those other things, which we've done. But you can just drive out a few miles and be out in the orchards and, the rural part.
Yeah.
You can get to the ocean quick. You can get to the mountains quick. a lot of history, you know, a lot of other things. And the diversity, as you talked about, is really, really unique. Now, let's talk about your congregation for a minute. Are they mostly coming from Christian churches?
I would say that actually we just did a survey, and many of them do have Christian backgrounds, predominantly Christian backgrounds. However, we have people from all walks of life who attend our services and go to other churches. That's the survey helped us to see that there are many who come to our community and belong to our services, our congregation, but they also go to other places. So for my diehard Catholics who just have to have Mass, they go to the 9 o'clock Mass and they come to our 11 o'clock services. We have Muslims who participate in our Sunday worship and go to Friday Juma. It's rather interesting, that dynamic. And I think it's something about, speaks something to the philosophical approach to unity, that it is not our intention to tell you what to think, but to provide a context in which you are able to think freely for yourself, choose freely for yourself, and shape your own spiritual destiny. And we offer what we feel are universal spiritual principles based on the teachings and example of Jesus Christ, but we feel that those teachings are not exclusive, mutually exclusive
That's a good way to say
us.
that.
Yeah, I think that those principles can be found in other traditions as well, and we honor all paths. We honor those paths, whether or not it's our predominant point of view. We create a safe place for people to land who are from other points of view.
When I was in college, more than 40 years ago, I read a book. Don't remember the man's name right now. It wasn't a very long book. It was just about theology, and it was just something that caught my eye. And one of his comments in there that I have sort of lived by was that God could become God because he learned how to rule and overcome the laws of the universe. But that he did that based on agency, on choice. And once he did that and overcame that and became God and then would create, you know, sons and daughters, the great, great underlying concept would always be agency. He would not force us to do anything. We've got to come along and learn it ourselves and all everything. That just leaped deep into my heart and I stayed there ever since. Now, is your camp that you and your wife running here nearby, or do you go somewhere far away to do that?
For the last several years, we've run a camp, 501c3, called Teen Dream Camp. It's a not-for-profit organization committed to interrupting patterns of teen self-sabotage and suicide by launching the dreams in the hearts of teenagers early, waking them up to those dreams. And over the years, we've hosted it on various college campuses. Currently, it's being hosted on the campus of Lynn University, where the last presidential debate was recently. And we've done it there for many years. We are actually in conversation about planting a flag here in Florida. We've been very happy to see what's happened with our graduates. One of them was just here in Sacramento. Her name is Michelle Delamore, as she was season 9 finalist on American Idol.
Wow.
And so we've tracked many of them. Another I just saw when I was in Chicago recently, she just wrote a book about her mother, 10 lessons she learned from her mother before she passed, Faith Walls, you know. So we've been able to see that there has been an impact. So we are in conversation about building a base for the camps here in Sacramento. Literally, I was just talking to one of the local justices about how we can partner together to do this in the area. It's just taken us a little while. The reason we delayed a little bit is because my wife and I had our third child, and my wife is the executive director of the camp. And so, you know, I mean, she's Superwoman, but I'm just saying, you know, give her a minute to let him get his legs under him.
That's a good dream that you're pursuing there.
Thank you.
Has anything ever happened to you that's better than being a dad?
No.
Me neither.
No. Wow, the miracle. the miracle, and of course I was there to witness all of my children come into the world, and the miracle that is it's quite amazing. Witnessing the unformed idea become form and pass through right before your eyes. Just, if you don't believe in God, you gotta believe in something after you see that. You just, okay, and of course I do, but and maybe that's a good reset point. As I'm talking to me now. That's a great reset point when I want to forget about this omnipotent power, when I forget and get stuck in my own belief. Just go back to that miracle of creation that my 3 children represent.
When our children were born, there weren't ultrasounds and sonograms and all those things, so you didn't know till you saw the baby. And the last 2 of the 5 I got to see born, and you have to wait till the baby clears the birth canal to see what you've got there. I thought over and over, nothing ever will happen to me, ever, that will be better than this. It's a wonderful thing. Where do we go in our society? And let's just talk Sacramento. Where do we go in our society with so much negativity and what I sometimes call the crud and the corruption? How do we overcome that? What do we do?
I think one of the first things that has to occur in order for us to overcome the crud and the corruption in society is to really go down deeply enough in ourselves first.
Good point.
I think there's a bridge that connects all of us, and if I go down deeply enough in myself, I come up in everybody else, and then once I can truly understand the part of myself that is violent, the part of myself that is uncaring and insensitive, etc. When I can really be honest with myself about those aspects of my personality, then I'm capable, maybe not condoning, but I'm capable of understanding how an untrained consciousness, an untrained and unguided soul can move to such extreme levels. And then I can step forward with a little more compassion about how we address the issues in Sacramento. And I think another key that can never be too much overestimated is dialogue. There's great value in providing a neutral ground where people can have dialogue around issues that face our common humanity, our common citizenship. And I'm not talking about Jerry Springer screaming matches. I'm talking about communicating in such a way that brings forth a level of vulnerability, that I can get a sense of your struggle, and you can get a sense of my struggle, and I can get a sense of your joys and successes, and you can get a sense of mine. And I can admit, I've been watching you, and I love everything you're doing over there at your church or in your neighborhood and all of that, and not run the jealousy bit, trying to co-opt and undermine, but kind of say, can you show me? Can you show me how you all cleaned up your neighborhood? Rather than hating the person who figured out a way, muster up a little bit of humility and say, man, that's working over there. Can you show me how we can do that here?
When you talk about dialogue, 4 or 5 times a year, I get asked if I'll be a arbitrator and a moderator and a judge, sort of between a couple of groups. And one of the groups will almost always be a faith-based group, and I think that's why they decide, let's call interfaith, and maybe they'll help. The other group might be a cultural group or a civic group or, school, club or whatever. Every single time that we sit in those, down this row of the tables, 4 or 5 and 4 or 5, and there'll be an attorney representing things. Every single time, 5 minutes into that, one of them will say, well, how come we never heard about that? Or, the other one will say, but you never said that, and it's all about this dialogue and communication. And I'm sitting there the whole time sort of thinking, well, I'm just supposed to listen here until they, have had it out. But I'm thinking to myself, come on, you guys, you could have settled this yourself 5 years ago, sort of deal. So dialogue's a wonderful thing.
It matters. It matters.
It does. What do you do hobby-wise and things if you have a minute of free time?
I love to roller skate, so that's a fun pastime of mine. I love to dance salsa merengue. For many years, I've lived in South Florida, and that little salsa merengue bug got a bite of me. And I enjoy reading, so I take some time to, and I'm not talking about required reading. I'm talking about recreational reading that I don't have to do for work. That inspires me.
I just went back and read Tom Sawyer, which I have not read since I was about 15 or 16 years old, and enjoyed it more than I dreamed I ever would. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Now, I saw the book about dressing and understanding and pursuing. Tell us a little bit about that, will you please?
I've written a book called The Designer Life, Distinction for Living Your Life by Design and Not by Default. And the intention with The Designer Life is to help people to become victorious over circumstances, positive transformers of community and leaders of society, and to find ways that I have been able to collect over time that are practical solutions for aligning your purpose with your passion and finding a way to do meaningful work in the world out of that.
Way to go.
Thank you.
Well, as we sort of come to the close today, one of the things I always like to ask is if you could wave a magic wand in your life and you could make something appear or disappear or fix or repair or whatever that would fix us in this world, what would that be?
If I could wave a magic wand and something would appear, it would have to be peace on earth. I would go for it. I'd wave that magic wand for the outbreaking, just a spontaneous outbreak of peace everywhere at once, and to see what that would be like. Just to witness it for a second would do my heart well.
Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing?
Yeah.
Lastly, I wanted to comment on Rev Kev, if I might. Long years ago, I was a Mormon bishop, and the youth took to calling me Bish Fish. And I was walking across the college campus where I was speaking not too long ago, and I heard somebody call out, Bish Fish. And I knew immediately it was one of those youth. Thanks for being here. Time flies by quickly.
Yes.
Appreciate it. It's nice to visit with you.
Thank you.
Thank you
God
very,
bless.
very much.
Yes, indeed. It was wonderful.